Welcome to the first turn. I'm Hyena.
I'm Llama.
And today we've got some Warhammer stuff to talk about. It might be a quick one here for us because we're kind of busy this weekend a little, but we'll try to get through everything we want to talk about. Got a couple of interesting, more different things to talk about this time. I mean, we're talking about some AoS stuff coming out, Sylvaneth, that kind of thing. But you've been reading the books for Warhammer 40k about Cawl, and you've got some thoughts. I mean, we've kind of talked about some of the theories of the 40k universe a little bit, but actually reading the books has given you some insight, I think, about where it's going.
Yeah, and it could be completely far off here, but it's interesting. Is like the first book, which actually came out, I think, back in 2019, and whereas those other two are much more recent, but the first one was the Great Work, I think it was called, and it was the one that they're all by Guy Haley, and they're fantastic, and I'm not all the way through them yet, but the Great Work sort of did the thing that like retconned a bit of 40k history and worked Cawl into it and showed you what his role in the Imperium was. So you learn unequivocally, and it has this interesting writing style too, where it will be like now and then show you what he's doing now, and then it'll be like circa 7,000 years ago and show you what was happening then, and then what he was like back then, what he was built like back then, and then how he acquired some of the things he has now, and so on. And that's everything from the literal consciousness of other scientists to augmenting himself, to experimenting and whatnot. So you learn a lot about his makeup, his nature. He still has a very human personality, and his reasoning for it was like knowledge works hand in hand with experience, and then like your personality is made up of your experience. And so he thinks the thing that makes him human is to keep this personality based on his knowledge and not just become like beep boop robot sort of thing. You of course learn about the nature of like Alpha Primus, his pseudo not Primarch guy that he made. That's like kind of a bit of a failure. Like he's more powerful than a Space Marine, but he's just in constant pain and doesn't quite function right. Anyway, my thoughts are, I think, and this could be like GW Warhammer 40k conspiracy theory-ish, is like there's a reason they brought Vashtor into the current setting. When we've talked about that, Vashtor the Archifane, who's this warp entity who has for eons fused the immaterial demons and the material machines and like made them work, and he understands technology in and out. But whether or not he's new or on the ascent is unknown because of how time works in the warp versus how it works in reality. Well, when you read in like Belisarius Cawl's book, he interfaces with some sort of Necron entity in what they refer to as a mountain, but it kind of feels like it's a pylon or a tomb world. And he's the first of the Mechanicum or of any humankind to interface directly with something Necron. And this thing speaks to him, and it speaks like it skips through time and space. Like it just sees in the fourth and fifth dimension in a way that we can't wrap our heads around. But Cawl gets a grasp on it pretty quick, and he even has Necron cryptechs who are like his captives that he uses for tasks and whatnot. He is someone who's able to understand their science. But then it led me to another thing. Is there a connection here? Because we've got more Necron stuff happening in the current setting. You've got Vastor's busy. You've got this big tear in warp space. And then I thought all the way back to some old 40k lore about when they used to just talk about the Dragon of Mars, right?
Mm-hmm.
There was just this, and the old Warhammer 40k story with bad artwork was just like the Emperor fought this thing called the Void Dragon and beat him and then trapped him on Mars, imprisoned him in the Noctis Labyrinth, this giant canyon that no one's allowed to live in or settle on or whatever, and it apparently imprisons him down there. So two things came to mind. One, I guess they've sort of canonified the idea that it is, at the very least, a very powerful Catan shard of the Void Dragon, or it could be the Void Dragon himself, but in a very weakened state. Whatever the case is, it's more powerful than any other shard floating around the galaxy. One, how did it get on Earth? There's my but that might not matter. They might not ever answer that. 2, it was in the Middle Ages of our timeline that the Emperor defeated him. How the hell did he get him to Mars?
Right.
So like, this further, entrenches us in this idea that the Emperor is much more than man, and possibly understood technology at a level he just didn't have the means to make it yet. So then the other question is, why would he put him there? So he foresaw this idea that there would be this like cult mechanicum, and he would need these planets to ally with human, and then the technology and blah, blah, blah. And so there must have been a reason he put him there. So the Adeptus Mechanicus themselves, including Belisarius Cawl, refer to the Emperor as the Omnissiah, like he taught them binaric. However, the machine spirit is a very different thing. So the machine spirit that sings through the machinery and talks to or interfaces with people who understand the tech, where the hell does that come from? And so there's these theories that Magladroth, or whatever the name is of the dragon on Mars, while it's asleep and imprisoned in this thing in the labyrinth, there's parts of it that are able to communicate or to express or to get out. And so that may very well be the machine spirit whispering to the Mechanicum. But wouldn't the Emperor have been aware that it's capable of that? So like he need it for, right?
So my kind of interpretation of the spirit, it was always like, they don't understand what programming is anymore.
Right.
They don't understand what logic is. They don't understand machine learning like we have it. Not necessarily like AI, that kind of thing, because that's forbidden. But how things are programmed, and when they issue a command to a piece of machinery and it performs its function because it's programmed to do so, they think it's some supernatural being possessing the machine that performs the task. That's always how I've looked at it, because we as humans don't know how to make machines with programming in the future. That's why we hook up human brains to the machines to do the thinking for us and to do the processing in terms of like servitors and the servo skulls and things like that. I always thought it was that was their primitive understanding of like, this is how a piece of machinery we found was programmed. There must be the spirit in the machine is doing the work. I think there is a difference between a machine spirit and like the spirit, like we call like the Omnissiah or whatever, the big overarching machine god that controls all machines. So like when they're whispering to the Titan to get it to work,
right?
It's a little bit different than being like, I worship the spirit.
It's interesting is and again, he would have had to have known what this would do for humanity and technology, and so he saw value in it clearly. But remember, one of the ways he made his Primarchs was he walked around in the warp without permission, stole these entities and ideas of human consciousness and trapped them in a Primarch body.
Right.
It's like,
which, if you think about it, that's very much like what Bashtor is doing, is binding immaterial entities to the materium, right? Like, if it is the case, and we're kind of assuming a little bit here and extrapolating a little bit, but if it is the case that the Primarchs are bigger, are more than just human, like genetically engineered humans and augmented humans, if there is some supernatural, demonic, whatever, I don't want to call it demonic, but immaterial presence, do more than just demons come from the warp? Like, are there other things in there? Like, we call things that come from there demons, but maybe not demons, maybe something else. But there's something supernatural that's being plucked out of the warp and put into, kind of melded with the human physiology and the body to create something more than just human, more than just a demon. Bashtor does that in a way. It kind of seems like maybe Cawl can't do that. That's why he failed at his experiment to create his own Primarch. But clearly the Emperor has achieved it, because he's created these irreplicable, pinnacles of human physique at the very least, that are unwavering. They're unmatched, in terms of humans. But you're right. Like, it's interesting that like it's different aspects of kind of the same thing of like, let's merge these two different things together to create something more. Vashtor being one of those beings that does that. We've gotten, Protorabo rumors coming. He's kind of fleshy machine
Yep.
melding.
Yep.
You've got the new Defiler, which very clearly has that like fleshy machine melding going on, and all the mutilators and stuff, that the new models for 40k that are coming out.
Yeah.
It's an interesting time, I think, to be reading these call books and seeing a lot of the same parallels and similarities.
Well, and he, of course, it's funny. It's like Cawl is almost like the fans themselves. Like he's trying to understand the same thing, and so they're writing it out like for us in an interesting way. And there are parallels with a lot of these, like you just mentioned. Vashtor is almost like this like parody of, or is like able to do something kind of akin to what the Emperor does, but it's like a mockery of it, where you fuse real and immaterium, and then you have this either very powerful shard or weakened star god imprisoned on Mars that the Mechanicum not only interface with but are learning technology from. And the Emperor obviously knew the whole time this thing was what it was, and yet was okay with it being there, was okay with Mars using it. So then what I wondered is, if this thing's trapped there, what if some part of its essence like has been able to escape or express itself within the warp? Because like you just said, the warp is more than just demons. There are other entities there, whether they are gods or consciousness things from various races or whatever, or they're still in birth, or star god reborn thing. So it's like, what if this thing expressed itself, but the way it appeared either in time was like the consciousness of the Anosai, or what if Vashtor is itself a physical representation of this entity being expressed? I mean, they even have like the same wing style, like right on the Void Dragon and on him. And so anyway, it was like the way you read all this, it's like there's some connection here between the machine and warp space combining things, and all three of these massively powerful entities are in play. While other things like the Golden Throne is failing, and Cawl is doing this great work, and the Necrons are all waking up. So, and then the way that this Necron entity speaks to Cawl, he is able to go back through Call's consciousness in time, which is where Cawl sort of loses track of reality. And he can see what humanity believes are gods versus what really are. And so it's like, it's funny. It's like you have these, the 8 point, you have the 4 that you think are gods, but they're a lie. And then you have this other one thing you think is a god, but he's a weapon. Like it's interesting how these Necron entities view what humanity considers to be their deities. Anyway, point being that it's like, I think there's a reason these books are happening now, these events are happening now with Iron Warriors and such. I think they're connecting a lot of these things. Whether it leads to a payoff, I don't know. It was really neat to like philosophize about it, because horror is just so cool like that. But yeah.
And you're on book which one? You're on the
I'm in book 2. And I tell you, I think everyone should read him. I mean, Cawl is just kind of a fascinating character, and boy, they can give you a lot of fan theories and loose ends and things tied up neatly through his perspective. They've really made him one of the most important characters in the current setting, and it's amazing how fast that can happen. Like look at Titus, like how fast he can suddenly become the most important character.
Well, I think it's interesting because these aren't necessarily new books. They've been out for years, and we just kind of haven't read them, and it kind of is informing a lot. Like maybe the information we would gather from reading the book when it came out wasn't as relevant and wasn't as wasn't connecting as many dots as it is now, because the story is developing and kind of incorporating some of those details. So I mean, it's not, I want to say it's not something where, oh well, we missed it by not reading it the first, when it first came out. We may not have even thought about it in the way we were thinking about it now if we read it when it first came out, 6 years ago. I think
we saw that happen with the end times at the end of the Horus Heresy too. It connected dots to now that didn't exist before.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And so like I think timing does matter, for sure. Referencing, old stuff like this with the new. I'm not I'm not upset that we didn't read these earlier, is what I'm saying. You know,
No.
that,
I think now
you know,
there's more payoff, maybe. Yeah.
exactly. And so I'm actually going to think about getting them and catching up to you and see if I can see some of that stuff too. Because it's like you said, it's super interesting, and I'm kind of excited about the 40k lore now. You know, with these kind of developments, because 40k and old fantasy and things like that for a long time, they just didn't move. It was hard to like get excited about the lore when it was like just kind of stationary and kind of not really moving. There have been a lot of moves recently to push things forward hundreds of years and develop, like you said, new characters that matter more than ever. I mean, they had these triumvirate of characters that pushed the story along, back in what, 9th edition, 10th edition, 8th, 9th, 10th. I forget when they were released, but like when Gilliman first came out with his triumvirate.
That was when we were moving from 7th to 8th. They did
that's
Gathering
right.
Storm.
That's right.
Yeah.
Because you had a bunch of characters there for the Imperium, you had a bunch of characters for the Eldar, you had these big characters that took place at pretty much in every single important narrative spot, right? They were there at all of them.
Yeah.
You've kind of got that going now too. Titus is going to be a much more important character with the development of the 500 Worlds story. Vashtor and in some ways, I'm hoping Proto-Rabo are going to be working together to push some Eye of Terror kind of narrative forward. Or
Huron Blackheart and Abaddon have been working together in some capacity.
And then we've got, like I said, rumors of next edition 40k involving some of the highest named orcs, kind of important too. So yeah, we'll see. I'm excited about it. And like I said, I kind of want to catch up on those books and get a piece of it too. But,
and it doesn't even feel like they necessarily are like retconning what we thought was canon. It's we just had a lot of gaps and non-answers, and it's like more recent novel developments have helped them come up with game elements like these campaigns and such. And it not only moves the story forward, it just connects dots in ways we didn't, without doing the thing of explaining every origin and shrinking the universe. So that's a tough balance to ride. I don't know if it's always been perfect, but I think it's making the universe more interesting.
I feel like they could have done it in a way that was like, oh, here's a book, we'll just explain it all. Right? They could have done it that way.
Right.
But instead, it's kind of like, here's a character, like you said, who is just like the audience, who has all the same questions that we have, and he's figuring it out. Right? He's going back to his own history and to, his laboratory, and he's figuring stuff out and learning about it. He's uncovering it, right? He's not just explaining how it's always been. He's also, getting new information about it, just like we are. I can feel like that's a much better way of developing the story and developing the plot points than just, a committee meeting saying, hey, we should write a book, read this book, explain, and then just explain everything.
Yeah.
So, it's a good way to do it.
It has been a good way to do it. I'm interested to see where it keeps going, because I think the most recent Cawl book literally just came out in 2025. It's not only making it more interesting and, again, connecting some dots, but also giving us an idea of where they may go with the story, and the fact that they do truly move it forward. I mean, it's funny, is there's been a lot of speculation that Titus, again, may at some point become the chapter master of the Ultramarines. And we don't have any solid leads on that, but their speculation had to do with what he's set out to achieve right now and what that might mean in terms of how Gilliman rewards him accordingly. And people said, well, but Marnius Calgar's always been there and he's popular. It's like, I don't think that matters. Like, I don't think any character is like really sacred anymore. I think if they find something that the audience is wanting or drives the story in a new direction, and it wouldn't even be
that would be really interesting.
Yeah, it wouldn't even be like they'd have to demote Marnius or even kill him off. He could be given some new title in Gilliman's version of the Imperium, right? Because Gilliman himself isn't even necessarily Ultramarines blocked anymore. He now oversees a ton of different chapters. And so, because he's Lord Regent of the Imperium. So like, it could be that Marnius gets put in some other position and then now I need a chapter master for the home world. So Titus, you've achieved these ridiculous things in the last century.
Right. That would be really interesting. I mean, what if they did demote Marnius though? Like, what if he wasn't? Like, I mean, we've seen it happen.
Yep.
Right. Like most recently, we saw it with Ravengard. What's his name? Shrike ascended to chapter master for a while after the previous chapter master was killed in the Damocles Gulf campaign. He was killed. Shrike became chapter master. New guy trained, kind of ascended him, and Shrike just stepped back and let him lead. Like, yeah. I mean, Marnius has been chapter master for so long that maybe he wouldn't do the same thing, but
right.
Why not? You know, maybe he could go back to being, captain of the first, leading the Terminators, leading the veterans, whatever. Well, maybe Space Marines or Ultramarines goes to break the Codex again, and they break off into multiple different Ultramarine chapters.
Yeah, so that's what I thought is like if he's going to reform some semblance of a legion or a new version, and that's what some suspect the Lion wants to talk to him about, not to fight each other, but to like, hey, maybe we need to do this to fight the coming threats. Well, now you might create new positions again, like first captain or Lord Commanders, or these like praetor positions that existed in the Fates of Legion. And now you put Marnius as like your Eidolon level guy, where he's more than a chapter master. He is essentially in charge if Guilliman's not there. So now you have individual first captains or whatever, and that whatever. Or you break each company into the successor chapters or the second foundings, and now you have a much bigger legion, and Titus is in charge of one of them.
Right. You've got Ultramarines first and Ultramarines second legion.
Right.
Each one has a chapter master. Like, I don't know, something like that.
Yeah. So there's room. They're making room for that to happen. Because it's not just bad guys moving, it's loyalists are doing all this stuff too. So, and you'd have to figure, of the ones who have sided with Guilliman, which a lot of them have, they might then want to do the same thing to their own. Hey, refill us with thousands of these new Primaris Marines, and we will become a legion also. And then you have the potential for a civil war to start right now, which is like the High Lords of Terra are super against what Guilliman's doing. But there is an Ordo, a smaller one called the Ordo Astartes, which is an Ordo specifically of overseeing Space Marine activity. And they are opposed to what Guilliman's doing. They have their own loyal chapters, which I think includes like the Minotaurs and these ones that are Space Marine hunters specifically. So now you've got like potential for Civil War type Primarchs versus the High Lords sort of deal.
That'd be interesting.
Yeah. So there's plenty of places for them to go. And I think these novels it's interesting because they're weaving the novels in to the game in a way that we really haven't seen before. The novels were like these standalone, just pick a spot in the galaxy and write about it. Doesn't affect the game. Now they're like kind of driving them both.
Yeah, it seems like they're timing the novels such that they're tying in with the campaign releases and these big narrative releases. Like, it's almost like, well, if you want to keep up with the whole story, you do have to read all of it. You gotta switch back and forth between novels, and the novels aren't just about pick up a spot in the galaxy and a period in the galaxy where like you can just learn a little bit more about that, a cool story in this area. Now it's like, well, shit, we need to, like, if you want to see the bigger picture that they're producing, that they're releasing for us, you got to kind of consume all of it, which is cool. And it's not, when you think about it, it's not weird, Yeah,
you still have standalone stories in both the Mortal Realms and the 40k universe, but yeah, now they have like an overarching drive to them both. So it's funny, as Magic the Gathering kind of used to do the same thing. It was, a lot of people didn't know when a card set was released why these characters and why these spells and whatever were coming in. And it's like, well, they usually release a short story or a novel alongside the set that told you what's going on in the Magic multiverse, and then now all of a sudden it made more sense why those planeswalkers were made and so on. But that's interesting. That like adds a level to the nerddom, I think, for those of us who like to sink our teeth into it and have more than just cards with little plastic men. So I don't know. One I don't know if it's a new story development, but one thing that we got paid off a little bit in Age of Sigmar that we have our thoughts is they did this Valentine's Day thing. Happy Valentine's Day for everyone who celebrates that for some reason. And yeah, they did this like perfume commercial type thing, and it was like buy a L'Oreal, and then it's this they show off this Grove Guardian model, which looks great. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so
we heard rumors about Sylvaneth.
So I'm a little confused. This guys have a lot of thoughts because it's pretty fresh, and I haven't gathered all my thoughts on it yet. So the model itself is sort of a Grove Tender, which we've had kind of heard about Grove Tenders in the lore before.
Right.
They set up these like, what do you call them? Sylvaneth war groves, you know, that are like the bastions of the Sylvaneth, and they tend them, and they gather the spirits and you know, infuse them into the trees and bring them to life. They use these soul amphoras, which are these little like seeds almost. You can see the model if you go and look. It's like dumping the liquid of one of these containers onto a plant, and then it's growing a new wraith, you know, a branch wraith or whatever it is. Well, Alorio's got those all over her beetle. They're like dangling on the side as decorations, and they're meant to be like, here's a seed to grow a new tree, here's a seed to start a new grove. Use the liquid to grow new Sylvaneth, that kind of thing.
Okay.
So this is one of those Grove Tenders that like nurtures the Sylvaneth people. It's a very weird model. I don't think technically it's unique, but every model recently they've come out with, I believe, for Sylvaneth, it was a kind of a bigger based character, has all been a unique model. You had Belthanos, you had the Doc-Ock, branch rich with, you know, kind of mini tree lord. You had the Wargrove Revenant, when it first came out, was unique for some reason, even though it was just kind of a generic character. This one might be unique. I mean, to me, it seems like there's a very limited number of them. They're not unique. Think about for Tzeentch, you had the Masters of the Silver Tower, the Gaunt Summoners. In lore, there was only 8 of them. But could you field 8 of them? More than 8? Yeah, maybe, perhaps. But you know, it's kind of like that.
You know, it's interesting aesthetically. She is like her own diorama here. She's just like a tree that grows into her, and then on the backside, in one of those flower bulbs, you've got a one of those elves kind of being birthed, and then or the spirits, and then you got the little bitey worms on her base, which that might pay off a rumor, but the interesting thing about those is that's another one of those where it's like, why didn't they make a swarm entity in that army that's like a base of those, or something, like Nurgling style unit, but make 3 of those and that's a unit.
A spite swarm, you know, that kind of thing. Yeah, I agree. But it's an interesting, cool model. I think they used Valentine's Day as an excuse to release it. We were talking about the fact that that's not necessarily all they're getting. I mean, obviously we were shown the Battletome and the battle forces and all that, but historically we've seen that the battle forces and spearheads have not contained new models for the most recent books. And so I don't think it rules out the fact that there might be more coming. We had heard that maybe Kurnothi were getting an update paid forward. That maybe even Dryads were going to get a release to update them, because that model is ancient and monopose and comes in boxes of 16.
Yeah, it's a weird,
like it's really weird. So maybe we'll get an update to that, even though the book is coming. It might come as a supplement. It might come as a army box. You know, the army box Kurnothi that's got, you know, a couple characters and 2 or 3 units, self-contained book, kind of like Dark Oath had. But just adds on to the Battletome. I could actually see something like that.
I think if the rumors are true that Age of Sigmar 4.0 will have sort of these end of edition campaigns like we're seeing in 40k, where there's going to be a year of or half a year of just, you know, that lets them release these supplemental books. And I don't know if you remember, I think it was a couple months ago, close to the time that Maggotkin got their update, a random like campaign book was released that had to do with the realm of life. It was all Path to Glory stuff.
Oh yeah, they do that every 6 months or so too. I know there was Jade and Bone was the last one. Shoot, what was the most recent one?
This one was
Was it
called Blighted Wilds.
Blighted Wilds? Okay.
Yeah,
Huh.
and so my thought is, since Age of Sigmar has featured this particular realm through a lot of it, it could be that they do an end of campaign style or end of edition style, and one of the supplements, let's say they do a similar thing to your 500 Worlds, your Maelstrom, etc., where there's this little 4-book pack, and it'll have various things, but one of them might be formations and war scrolls for some new units, and it could be that if they're still featuring this Gyron or this particular realm, that some payoffs for that Kurnothi stuff might be with that, might be alongside that instead of as part of their battle tome.
Yeah, could be.
Thoughts on whether or not that's a good or bad thing? I don't know. I love that armies can now get touched out of sequence. But
Well, they did have some interesting wording in that release article too, talking about the Regiment of Renown that was an 8-model Warcry warband plus a branch witch, I think. They did say that this was the former Warcry warband. As in, like, this was from the game, the former game Warcry. As in, like, Warcry is not going to be continued. They actually kind of acknowledged that for the first time in a while that they've actually brought it up by name and then said, it's not for that anymore. This was a brand new warband. This is one of the last ones they released.
It was,
and they're calling it the former game, basically. I could see the Kurnothi side of things having been a warband for Warcry.
Oh, sure.
You're not an army proper. You're just kind of soldiers and scouts and savage people who are trying to participate in the Warcry events, kind of thing. So maybe it's also pivoting away from packaging and intention and like trying to figure out how it fits. And maybe that's why we haven't seen them yet. And they didn't want to wait on the book because it worked out time-wise.
Could be.
I'm speculating. I don't know. But I could see something where we do get them, but it's clear like these were probably meant for the other game. That kind of thing. I think we've seen some things like that already where it's like, well, this is clearly not intended. That kind of thing. But I also wanted to talk about Sylvaneth Aside, which wasn't on the roadmap in any way, by the way.
Nope.
It was Tzeentch and Lumineth, and then Bone Reapers were like the next things that are going to be coming out, and then Sylvaneth was like just slotted in right between those things. Like it just wasn't even talked about, didn't even see it coming. Interesting. But more exciting things that I'm no offense, Sylvaneth, but more exciting things that I've heard some rumors about were about again the Cities of Sigmar and Skaven kind of soft launch, some kind of a launch box set versus kind of setting. There were more rumors about what's going to happen with the Cities of Sigmar book when it comes out. It sounds like this time around we might lose some of the old stuff from fantasy and become more of a concrete, full-formed army for Cities of Sigmar. But what I think is interesting is it sounds like they're kind of shifting the focus of the Cities of Sigmar races. So you have armies already of dwarves, you've got armies already of elves.
Mm-hmm.
They're likely going to be taking the dwarves and the elves out of the Cities of Sigmar and giving us other races that don't have as much representation. It sounds like one of the things they're going to be trying to do is expanding the city ogre side of things.
Okay, sure.
And then do some of the other like demi-humans and lesser represented ones. People were talking about them even trying to bring halflings back, and they might be part of Cities of Sigmar in some capacity.
Okay,
it's interesting. But like we've got the Ogre Warhulk model that they released, where he's like carrying a guy on a big pole.
Yes,
it sounds like they're also going to try to bring in some sort of order gargants, some like mid-sized giants, be part of the Cities of Sigmar, and like helping them haul equipment or like be the siege breaker kind of colossal units to pave the way for the
I think I
humans.
read something about one of those, some sort of gate breaker thing, but like smaller.
Yeah. So in the rumors they were saying, I'll try to give the wording on what specifically was said in the rumors, was that the Marshall and Griffin model, which was the old Karl Franz model from Fantasy, has been in City of Sigmar for a long time.
Yep.
We were given Talia Vedra, who was running in Magicor, kind of the same size profile, but doesn't have a generic version of her. She's just a named character. But that old Griffin model it doesn't. I don't think it was correct stylized, even when it first came out. It's this big hulking, like, you know how chickens nowadays are just fed hormones and stuff, and they blow up to these, big balloons.
Yeah,
that's what that Griffin looked like to me. He looked like a hormone,
huge breasted bird.
Yeah, super weird looking model, but it's iconic. It's been in cities, Free Guild, whatever incarnation the humans have had for the whole time, but it sounds like that might finally be going away.
Okay,
which is expected but unfortunate.
Bittersweet.
Yeah. But in addition to that, the other side of that kit is the Amber Wizard on the two-headed Griffin.
Yep.
But in that same era, when that was released, you also had like the steam tanks, you had the Celestial Hurricanum,
That's a big one. Yep.
Those kind
of. They also weapon.
Yep. Those also might be going away at the same time. Yep. All those kind of like war machines, gyro bombers, gyrocopters. I mean, all this stuff's not going away necessarily, but going back to old world, right?
Right.
Because that's where they're from. So, but with trimming down the line and losing that kind of stuff, it sounds like elves and dwarves are going too. So with the addition of like the foot knights and the like alchemical weapons for humans, they're kind of trying to replace a lot of those kits. I mean, in my mind, you can replace a lot of elite infantry with a single kit, right? Because you look at elves, they've got 3 elite infantry units. You look at dwarves, they've got 3. The role of those units are all kind of similar.
Redundant.
And if you get rid of all 6 of them and release 1 infantry unit that's elite, hard hitting, whatever, you fill the spot of all of them.
You can.
So that's fine. But it sounds like the replacement stuff they're going to be doing for a lot of that behemoth and a lot of that that war machine stuff is going to be gate gargants, which is what I was talking about. It's what they're kind of being called. I don't know if they guard the forts or if they are the ones that kick down the gates when they're attacking forts. I don't know. But gate gargants, cog forts.
Yeah.
So that the cog fort idea was from back in 2nd edition with the malign portents. They showed off in some of the stories these big, like, kind of walking, slowly crawling. Think of a rook, and that's what I'm thinking of in my mind.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
You've got just one tower like that is on wheels or legs or something that crawls along and gains ground. It's a mobile fortress that's got cannons and crew and whatever. Obviously, smaller versions of that exist. We saw it in one of the Hammer and Bolter episodes, or was it?
It was the one that featured Dark Oath.
Yeah, it was whatever the animation was that had the Dark Oath attacking the actual Free Guild people out in the wilds. They had a 30-foot or 40-foot tall cog fort, a small one, even though that's not very small. Kind of fortified position around it. I'm picturing that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then they brought up the name Donner's Triumph. Is going to be added, whatever that is, and I'm not really sure what that means. If it's going to be a new sect of Free Guild, maybe. If it's going to be a named unit, a named character unit of some kind, I'm not sure. I'm hoping the Donner's Triumph is like more of like an event, right? Like these are the veterans of whatever city that was claimed, the something dawn or something like that. The triumph of establishing a new city. These are the veterans, and this is where you get your knights and your heavy gunners and your a named character to lead them and your war priests and like all that stuff. Like maybe that's Donner's Triumph is that group. because you had the Dawnbringer Crusades was kind of an event that happened where they were trying to claim, new cities.
Yep.
And maybe the people that go off on the Dawnbringer Crusade are called the Dawners or something, and like the triumphant Dawners, the ones who succeeded, are getting an update, that kind of thing.
Well, one
know.
rumor I saw was that someone who's relatively reliable said that a new Cities of Sigmar terrain and the Cogfort are two different things. So
okay,
that rumor's supposed to, because people were worried that the Cogfort was just going to be their faction terrain and not a unit. And then we heard people go back and forth, and one of the more reliable people said, nope, they're going to be two different things.
Okay. So maybe the Dawners triumph is a monument. Think about like the planting of the flag in Washington for World War II, like that. Right. It's just like that statue. It's like, here's your faction terrain. It's like a rally point of like, that kind of thing. So I don't know. I'm hoping that there's enough being released that it's going to feel okay. That things are being kind of replaced in a 1-to-1 ratio. You lose all this old stuff, you lose all this, non-human stuff, and you get replaced with equivalent. And it's mostly 1-to-1. I'm okay with that kind of stuff. I mean, obviously you're going to lose a few things that aren't going to be replaced. I mean, Dark Elves had a lot of stuff, all their chariots and all their monsters, the Charybdis and the War Hydra, the Terror Riders, heard they're called. The other side of the Warlock kit.
Yeah,
I forget what it's called. That kind of stuff. I mean, obviously a lot of that's going to be replaced 1-to-1, but it should feel like a more cohesive single style army, as opposed to like a hodgepodge of like, well, we had all these kits laying around from the old game. Where can we put them? That kind of thing. And in my mind, a lot of that stuff going away leaves room for expansion and replacement in some spiritual capacity. Right. Like, so maybe we lose the Hydra and the Charybdis, but then, Darza King gets an update that releases some weird like Hydra monsters.
Yeah.
Or we get an update to Malachi's army. Malarian, sorry. His army, and maybe he's got some things that replace them spiritually. Maybe he's got, shadowy terror riders, that are quick and fast and ride evil horses, and then it's like, oh, there's your, replacement. So I don't know. I reserve judgment for a while, because usually something does step in to replace the thing you lose.
Yeah, so with Cities of Sigmar, they have been this entire edition just a whirlwind of different rumors for their faction. And I imagine it's like that in the design studio. I think they've made the decision that they want this to be largely the human faction with some elements that are other. Right. And so there were a zillion and one directions they could take it. Now, I think the base, like Free Guild guys, aesthetically look great. And so that's a style but I think they absolutely could have pulled design, because that's what people are speculating too, is what will these look like? Will they look like this Cities of Sigmar aesthetic we established in 3rd edition? Or are they going to bring some of the weird magical stuff like the Luminarch? Are they going to keep that sort of technological magic hybrid with the Cogfort, or is it going to look like the thing from the cartoon? Or I don't know. Will they still have Dwarven and Elven ideas similar to how the Stormcast stuff is designed by dwarves, and so you see that in like some of their shields and whatnot? Do you think any of that will remain, or it will just largely go towards the Free Guild style?
I don't know. I mean, it's like you said, the dwarves are definitely responsible for building a lot of what we see in the Cities of Sigmar. A lot of their cities are built by the dwarves. A lot of their armor, even for like the Free Guild people, are designed by the dwarves. They're much heavier and much more iron. They're
rigid,
yeah, that's very dwarven design. Very different from what humans would design, in fantasy. I mean, will we see some dwarves mixed in? I mean, we saw kind of, is there any other races like mixed in on like the cannon crew or Things like that. I can't
That's a good question.
remember. I mean, maybe we'd see something like that where it's like, oh, well, crewing the cog fort, there is a dwarf manning one of the cannons or something at the
Or a
top,
gnome
something
or
like that.
something. Yeah, some equivalent.
But I think story wise, what's happening is it's like maybe there's a call to the dwarf people who are disparate and spread out and kind of without their normal ancestral homes, that there's a call to like unify them, to like retake the dwarven holds and like reestablish a thing. Like I could absolutely see that happening too, because we're supposed to have sort of a kind of a more unified dwarven faction coming at some point.
That's still a big,
And so
rumor.
maybe so maybe the idea that like, oh well, the dwarfs are rallying to go take back their homelands is going to produce a new army for the game. Well, that means they're vacating the cities that humans are living in, because it's never felt like their home anyway, right? Like maybe they're going to be leaving those districts and heading off to reclaim their holds, and so they aren't a part of the cities of Sigmar anymore. And I know a lot of the elven factions, the sub factions, and whatever are not really represented as standing members of those armies. Like certain cities have regiments and whatever of elves that fight with them, but it's not like a common practice amongst all cities. And so you had something like Settlers Claim or the Phoenicium city from the old version of those cities of Sigmar use the Phoenix Temple models, but it was specifically like, oh, if you're running Phoenix Temple models in this army, you pretty much need to be from this city because this is the city that has that temple. And so it's like, I don't know. I think they're trying to be like, this is the army represented for every city. It's mostly humans. And then there could be splashed in some things. Well, you can splash in some things for fun anyway by using regiments of renown and stuff. You don't need to have that actually represented in the army's book as part of it. Like, well, you could run a full elf army in Cities of Sigmar if you wanted to. Like, well, maybe they're getting away from that.
That could be because now you could play cities and then buy a regiment of renown that's Lumineth, or buy a regiment around that's one of the dwarf whenever they come around. That rumor about the Khazid holds or whatever that book's going to be called for the dwarves, it sounds like that's still a ways off. But what happens with cities might help foreshadow what we can expect to see there. Either way, it sounds like cities is going to get a pretty big release, right? I mean, if all this stuff comes true and it actually comes alongside the book, I don't know. That sounds like they're going to have one of the feature releases of this edition.
Yeah. No, I'm excited about it. Like I said, I've kind of liked every time they step into more of the chivalry side of Cities of Sigmar, with like the knights and the priests, like the warrior priests and stuff. It's always looked great. I mean, the new Darkwater box had that knight in it. It had like the knight errant, kind of like living saint girl. I've really liked the aesthetics of them. I thought they were great. If they lean more into that, the steel rook, the little like command squad, like, I'm excited to see where they go with it. I've wanted, listen back any episode you want. I probably talk about the fact that foot knights aren't a thing in Cities of Sigmar yet, and they need them. I'm really excited that they're finally getting something like that. It's, I think, quintessential of what that army wants to be. I was actually kind of hoping that maybe there was even more expansion to it. I mean, we saw like in all these animations, the Black Talon episode and stuff. Cities of Sigmar soldiers have a lot more than just sword and shield. You know what I mean? Like there were pikemen, there were halberdier people, there were, like I said, chemical weapons, and obviously there are even more well-equipped knights and such. There's a lot to expand there. And so, but even if that is the case where it's like they expand that way and they go, oh, it's all human, I'm still gonna use models I have, and which again, you can still do that. You're not proxying, you're adding flavor to your army, call it, right? If you've got elite elf units, models and stuff, and you're like, well, these count as these. It's like, yes, you're right, they do. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
I converted a bunch of Bretonnian foot knights to be executioners. So I flipped the script. I made the humans the elves instead of the elves the humans. If my executioners go away, do you think I'm not going to use those Bretonnian knights that I've already kit bashed as whatever these new knights are?
Right. Yeah.
Like I absolutely am.
As long as they're on the right base
Whatever.
size and they're a GW model, it's whatever.
And if they look at least somewhat reasonably appropriate, you can't be like, well, here's my Skaven assassins. They're heavily armored foot knights for City of Sigmar.
Better
It's like, the hell they are.
Yeah.
Get out of here.
Yeah.
I mean, here's my toy dinosaur. He's a Imperial Knight. It's like, no, he's not. Get out of here. Anyway,
Well,
a little bit of effort, and no one should. If you put a little bit of effort into it, no one should be able to say anything to you.
no.
Play with your toys. So.
And we are, by the way, just 5 weeks out from Adepticon, speaking of. So I think there'll be some questions answered for some of this, has to be. So I have to imagine now, unless they're getting something else, as we talked about in the campaign, Sylvaneth won't be what they show off there. So now it's back up into the air as to what we're going to see on the Mortal Realms side. We expect the 40k side will be 11th edition announcement, possibly more end of edition campaign stuff. But yeah, we can have a tasting of that here in the coming weeks as we look forward to that event.
Sure.
Yeah. Speaking of, I did find out I will be teaching at another convention this year.
Oh.
There's one in Austin, Texas in June called the Pigment Miniature Show. And it's a smaller one. They currently have an attendance cap. It's only a few years old. So they only allow like 600 people or something like that to go right now. But the lineup of people teaching, a lot of big names. And my application went through, and so I'll be actually teaching a class there.
Wow.
But
okay.
yeah, there's some big names like Kaha's there, and Borsha, the guy who won the Slayer Sword last year at Adepticon, he's going to be teaching there. Yeah.
What's the time frame for that? What time of the year is that?
That's in June.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll be down there for a couple days for that. Yeah.
Awesome.
Should be fun. Yeah.
Yeah. Texas.
Yep. Austin in the summer. I'm sure that'll be great. But yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Reaper also has a headquarters down in Texas, don't they?
They do. Yep.
And they have their own convention of some kind?
They have the Reaper Con. I think it's the same exact weekend as Nova. So it's that like September, that first weekend of September. Because Gen Con's 1 month before, and that first weekend of August. They've been trying to spread all these out, because now there's enough of them. But yeah, ReaperCon and Nova fall on the same weekend, so they get a little divided in terms of who gets to attend what.
But ReaperCon is very much a hobby side, and Nova is very much a tournament.
It is.
So, I mean, I guess you're still, dividing some people, but it's very different crowds.
They are, and now the Nova Open, their painting competitions become a big deal for a number of reasons that the community likes and dislikes. But that was a big deal. They got hundreds of entries, capital palette they call it, and paints were selling very successfully there, more so than usual. So Nova's starting to grow beyond just being a tournament, but it is much more about that. Whereas ReaperCon, I think there's like no tournaments. I think it's all just like classes, workshops, hobby stuff.
And is it other companies besides Reaper?
Yep. Yeah, they host a few companies there at that one. Because I think there were a couple of companies competing for vendor stalls there. I think Dracoya is actually competing for a stall there, but she's going to have to decide if she herself will be at Nova or at ReaperCon, and then has to put somebody at the other one. So yeah, other companies go to that one still, but that one's still pretty small. I don't think Reaper gets, like Nova this year had an attendance record. They were up over 5,000, I think, and I don't think ReaperCon gets quite that many. But yeah, no, I'm glad there's a bunch. And then of course now we have in October is when LVO is. So like now it's just like that second half of the year, they just line them up now.
Well, that's definitely have to pick and choose. That's for sure. I don't know. I don't know what my second one's going to be this year. I was thinking about doing Gen Con, but Gen Con is such an expensive trip. We might also be having some stuff happening around that time that prevents us from going. So
yeah, the badges are already for sale. They put them up.
Maybe no Gen Con. And it's like, and it's just so far in advance that it's like I can't. I definitely couldn't even commit to it at this point because everything's so up in the air. I think I'm gonna have to pass on Gen Con this year. Honestly.
Well, and I think it's tricky for people in the miniatures community in general, or specifically, because a lot of them right now are gearing up for Adepticon. If you're some of the Europeans, and then of course if you're in North America, so you're getting ready for that, which is itself an expense. You know, your hotel, your travel, you're preparing for food and whatever you're going to buy in the vendor stand, and then it's like, oh, by the way, while you're doing that, and it's tax season, so you might be even shorter on. The Gen Con badges go live. It's like,
by the way, the Gen Con badges are a few $100s, and no, you can go book a hotel, put a deposit down for that. It's just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I have one advantage, being where I'm currently located now. Gen Con's only about a 3.5 hour drive for me, so I might still be able to go. I might not go for all 4 days, but so I'm still considering it. I wouldn't be working, so it would be my chance, because this year I'm working at more cons than I'll be just getting to play at. So it might be my chance to still have like a vacation-y con. So I might, we'll see though, because again, that part of the year is starting to get crowded.
Yeah, for sure. And it's like, yeah, there's pretty much a con a month. If you want to go all of them, like you're not, there's no shortage of cons to go to.
No. Yeah.
No. And then, like you said, sometimes it's multiple in the same weekend even. So it's like, oh, you gotta, it's really starting to fill up. That's for sure.
It is. It is. I could, speaking of, I could decide to
Fill
be
up.
filled. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sorry. What now? Valentine's Day? Anyway.
Yeah, you heard that right. Yeah.
Well, let's go fill ourselves then.
Let's be full of it.
Yeah.